Hello everybody, welcome to the final part of the Elden Ring 1.0 exploration series. Even though there's not a lot of content here, there is still a lot of changes that I would like to discuss, including things to wrap up the entire series. However, this isn't going to be the end of the project in its entirety. I do have plans for something after this, but I'll discuss that more at the end. But for now, let's get into it. In the little pathway that normally leads you to the Avenue balcony in normal Leyndell, there's no tarnished sunflower in 1.0. Corrin's dialogue is the same before you go meet Gold Mask, but even after you do so, he never actually dies, so I just took care of myself. There's nothing to comment on really. The Gold Mask corpse does have the Mending Rune of Perfect Order, but he does not drop the Gold Mask set. We never found the actual mask, so I didn't really expect to find it here, but I did make sure by reloading and stuff. This is a little bit random, but another character actually went back and checked on Gold Mask and attacked him in his initial spawn point, and he actually leaves the corpse model behind, which I find really interesting. He doesn't just disappear entirely. But if you reload, he still comes back to life. The ancient Somber Stone near the gargoyle is still there, thankfully. There's no Hero's Rune 4 equivalent in these rooftops. And I did double check the Crimson Ember Medallion +2 and the dropped into the sewers, it was still there. And same goes for the Earthtree Favor +2 when you come from the Forbidden Lands. Nothing to comment on either of those. One thing that I did find really interesting though, is that upon checking the Tower of Return, the chest actually is deactivated. At first I thought it was because I already had used it prior to the Earthtree burning. But it turns out in a different character, without me having taken this chest yet, it was still open already. Meaning that the game actually doesn't want you to go here after the Ashen Capital segment. So naturally, out of curiosity, I actually glitched myself up there with the Pegasus glitch. And I found out that the entire area is more or less wiped. They actually don't want you to be here anymore. Even if you haven't got the talisman or gotten Melania's Great Rune, they still just made it impossible to get here naturally. Funnily enough though, the elevator actually was still operational, so I was able to go down there. But there's not really anything to comment on. The only thing I noticed that's interesting is that you can actually use Torrent down here for some reason, but you normally can't in the Ashen Capital. Either way, this was fixed for a release version. Obviously, you can still come here afterwards by going to the Tower of Return. But if you're planning to do open up playthrough, just keep that in mind. Going towards the Gideon fight, the fight begins immediately and he actually is talking to you as you start fighting. The background song is Godfrey's theme. When normally it's playing the Mirrored, and that includes the change to phase 2 whenever you get Gideon to have health. Funny enough, you can actually interrupt Gideon's dialogue if you just hit him. But I did double check in a different character and the dialogue's the same. In 1.0 he uses 2 flask heals instead of 1. The Law of Causality pops off instantly if it's procced, meaning that it's a lot more dangerous as you can't dodge it. Well, it's kind of neat in a way. That also means that if you don't want to get hit, you either got to play passively or attack from range, which is easier said than done in most cases. If you die, he doesn't have any dialogue, and it turns out that there's no Stake of America for him, so you have to run back all the way from the capital of Ashgrace. His dying dialogue gets cut off at random points. The farthest I was ever able to get to was this bit.
Cannot kill.
But it gets cut off just a bit early. But it does appear a little bit random, it sometimes got cut off earlier. And if you get too far away from him, he actually gets cut off that way. Which is kind of neat for the speedrunning sense, but yeah. Just quickly going to the chambers. Earthtree Heal is named Golden Heal in 1.0. Now going on to Godfrey or Hoarah. The phase 1 fight is pretty much identical, I didn't notice anything different. However, if you do die in phase 1, he has an additional line at the very end of his taunt.
Tarnished warrior, 'twas nobly fought. Thy rest is well deserved.
Going on to phase 2, however, you might notice that he's still in phase 1 after getting his health down all the way. And that's because he actually just has a hidden health bar for phase 2, kind of like Melania and such. On a personal level, I have a love-hate relationship with hidden health bars. Sometimes that can be a very interesting experience and such, but sometimes it can just be infuriation. If you're having trouble with phase 1 of a fight, normally you would like to be able to sort of spread out your flask usage as you get through the health bar. So defeating a boss and finding out that it has a different phase you have to account for now is definitely a little bit frustrating at times. Either way, this is just 1.0. They definitely changed this in current patch. I guess let me know what should you prefer, hidden health bars or just in the same health bar. The phase 2 earthquakes don't have the eruption effect. It just has a lot of rocks going up and down. I guess it makes more sense. I'm not really sure why Godfrey can summon eruptions out of the ground in phase 1, but that's how it is in this version. But besides that, there's nothing else different. The fight was still identical mechanically. After you kill him, he actually has an additional laugh at the end of his dialogue that was cut in later versions.
Tarnished. Thy strength befits same crown.
We don't get the best read on his personality, so it's hard to say if this is in character or not. He seems very serious for the fight, pretty much. But it is his last words, I guess, so who knows. Checking his remembrance, the Axe of Godfrey has a lower strength requirement, but has a dex requirement in 1.0. And the Regal Roar is called either Regal Stomp or Divine Quake, depending on which menu you're looking at. Now going on to final boss duo. For Radagon, the stone platform prompt pops up whenever you load it into the fight after the cutscene, which normally doesn't even show after the boss fight. It only shows if you warp in or reload after you beat him, and you still haven't chosen an ending. Besides that though, there's literally no change to Radagon that I could tell. Even the particle effects were pretty close as far as I could tell. If I had to make a stretch, to me it seemed like he's not as prone to parrying your projectiles as much. From what I could tell, it seems like he has to put out his hand in front of him to be able to parry, which is actually quite nice. It feels a little bit more balanced that way. Now going on to the LLB segment, there's no music playing during the boss fight transition cutscene, so you get to listen to a lot of interesting sound effects. This might amaze a lot of you to hear, but I actually found Elden Beast much more annoying in this version. I know it's a known meme that sometimes it'll just dive away from you back to back a lot, but in this version of the boss fight, if you're far away from it, it'll constantly spam attacks like the tracking bullet attack, which I'm convinced do more damage overall. That not only is annoying to avoid consistently, it usually puts Elden Beast far away again. If it doesn't do that attack, it'll of course do other long range attacks, but as you try to reach him, it's most likely he'll dive away or do the tracking attack. In general, it seems to do a lot more of the annoying attacks that you can't punish, so not only will a good percentage of the fight be you trying to close the distance, but it'll also be spent trying to avoid extended periods of tracking attacks. I don't normally mind this fight, but I'm also not super great at it yet, and fighting it in this version was really tedious. The dives that it does to get away from you will actually hurt you if you're too close, and push you back. It is hurt a lot, mind you, but it's something you would want to dodge, in this version at least. The boundaries of the boss arena aren't shown in a vague white fog when you reach them, they're completely invisible, which makes it really bad. The Wave of Gold attack is much further reaching, which is ironic, we'll see why later. Apparently you can cast multiple Elden Stars and having them running around at the same time, which is just my nightmare. I had 3 going at once at one point, but the first one exploded before the third one could start being a problem at least. I'm also convinced this does more damage. I thought I killed it at one point and it was just kind of chilling there, but it turns out I had just broken its posture and I almost died looking at it. The God Slain pop-up, it's a lot faster to come up, and you get warp very fast with very little fanfare overall. If you reload in the stone platform, the Limgrave theme will start playing, because of course, why wouldn't it? But it does go after a little bit, as some of the prior areas. America's hammer stats are all over the place, except for the dex requirement, that's still the same. And the Sacred Relic sword has slightly less dex and faith requirement. Now as for the endings, I did verify all of them, and besides the snappier transition in some parts of the cutscenes of any of the Elden Lord variations,
The fallen leaves tell a story of how a tarnished became Elden Lord. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Our seed will look back upon us and recall.
aside from that, literally all 6 endings are the same in their visuals and dialogue, including Goth Melon and such. Nicholas Needle did the animation as if it worked to revert the Frenzied Flame, but it still left the eyes and fingerprints, so I'm not sure if it actually worked, but it seems like it's the same in current patch as well, and that does work. I'll double check if this actually works in the full completed video. As for the ending credits, it plays a different version of the Godskin Apostle theme. The credits are very long, so I'm not gonna show all of it right now. I'll play more of it as we end the video. When the credits ended, the song never truly ends, it just kind of abruptly cuts, and it shows the New Game Plus dialogue thing. One thing I noticed is that if you approach or warp into the Elden Throne Grace after beating the game, you get sent instantly to the Round Table Hold for some reason. Perhaps there's something to do with the fact that some of the endings actually take place at that throne, but in post-release it doesn't happen at all. This is definitely some kind of bug. Alright, now for some of the series wrap up. I did get around to comparing all the soul names and popped all of them to get a count of what they are, and I'll be showing them all right now. Apparently I never got an Antian's Rune 2, I'm not sure if I missed it or anything in 1.0, but just due to the process of elimination I was able to deduce the name obviously, and every single rune was a 1-to-1 match from release, meaning that they all gave them the same rune amount or the corresponding one in 1.0 to current patch, so I could also fill in the Antian's Rune 2. And so that means the only difference between these are the names. There's no difference from post-release to 1.0 as far as runes are concerned. Even the design of all of them seem to be pretty much identical. Besides the Meteorite Staff, the other big farmed spellcasting tool that I was told about is the Giant Seal. So I did go out of my way to farm that, and yes, it seems like any Fire Monk will actually drop it. At least the red ones. I can't verify for the Black Flame ones. I did also farm those to see if they dropped the God Slayer, but didn't seem to. Though I didn't farm for too long either. Now that the gameplay segments are done, I did go ahead and respec my character to be able to use pretty much all the spells and weapons in the game that I have. I was going to start with spells, but they pretty much are all the same. Some look surprisingly the same as post-release, some have very slightly different colors or effects. I assume there's a lot of number tweaking and such that's been going on since 1.0, but I don't really want to touch that, at least not for a video. So I'm just going to jump over to the weapons, primarily the Ashes of War. The Coated Sword has Sacred Blade instead of the unique Ash of War that allows you to go through shields. The Lordsworn Greatsword has the swooshy unique moveset for Greatswords, the one that only about 3 weapons have. And meanwhile, the Knight's Greatsword doesn't have that. It has the normal moveset, which is interesting because this actually gives you at least one non-farmed Greatsword that has that moveset, or one tied to a questline, which is nice. It just gives you one that you don't have to farm or go out of your way for in a way. The Sacred Relic Sword's Wave of Gold seems much more balanced because the range is much more short, but it's still a very wide net that it casts, and it is indeed very busted in release, so to me this is much more balanced. Sure, this is God's weapon or whatever, but I don't know, it didn't need to be that ridiculous with the range. Even with the later patch reducing the damage as it travels more, it's still pretty ridiculous. And honestly, if it had this range, it could even have more damage, and I would think it would be fairly fair, assuming you can dodge it properly in close range. The Blasphemous Blade Ash of War goes much faster. That should caught me off guard how fast it went. And ironically, the Ruins Greatsword Ash of War is much worse. It travels much more slowly. And it even might possibly have less range, but I'm not sure about that. It seems pretty close. But it does kind of seem like these two weapons flipped. Given the Styrochromis for the Ruins Greatsword, maybe it makes sense that it would be better in that regard, but yeah. The Moonveil has an insane Ash of War range, especially for the R2, but the R1 is also pretty long compared to post-release. The Axe of Godfrey has little rocks coming out of the ground, which makes sense depending on the part of the fight, I guess. Siluria's Tree has a wind effect instead of golden waves. Given that the Crucible Knights do have the gold effect, is definitely interesting. Does make me curious if it does physical damage or something instead of holy. And last thing I noticed is the lightning bolts don't have an AoE, it seems. Kind of like in post-release, which is kind of equivalent in pushback to explosive bolts. Perhaps a little more balanced, but admittedly it's nice to have 2 sets that can do something like that. And finally, before we end, I want to quickly highlight Larval Tears. I went back and got some Larval Tears I had missed in the series, and it turns out that all the ones that are a mimic enemy, so for instance the little hollow enemies that turn to a bigger enemy, all of those were still where they were, and it seems like the main problem was just the ones that are dropped by the Silver Tears, the ball ones at least. It seems like none of them were dropped by those, and some of the merchants didn't have them sold. So due to that, there's about half of what it normally is. I ended up with a count of 9 Larval Tears by the end of the playthrough. I'll make sure to amend this better whenever I put out the full completed video, but I did make a crappy checklist here to show you which ones are not in the game as far as I can tell. So they should all be accounted for. Okay, before the proper goodbyes, here is the call to action I was referring to. If you have missed it during community posts or maybe me commenting on other videos of this series, I am still going to make one more video for Elden Ring 1.0, and it's going to be compiling every single video that I've made so far and touching up some of the early ones that had a lot missing because I wasn't as thorough back then and didn't have the guide, and also wasn't sure if I was going to make this series or not. But just for the sake of thoroughness, I'm going to be posting a community post at the same time as this video comes out. And that is the proper place where you can submit things that I had missed during the entire series. Whether it be this part or any of the prior ones. If you know something that I don't, even if you have posted it in a different comment, I will look through those, but just to make sure I never miss it. If you have a change that you're aware of, comment it there. There will be a link in the description, in the comments, of course. I do want to ask that you're as specific as you can be. I've been given info that it's incomplete before, and thus I couldn't figure out what to do to get something to work out. So if it's a complicated change that needs some steps to it, I would appreciate the more you can give me. The only thing I can think of a very specific question that I have, which I don't think I've seen anyone comment, but just gonna put this out there. I actually found pretty much all the spells in the game. I think they're all in there. The only thing I'm missing right now is the ones that are from the Godslayer's Prayer Book, because that wasn't in Stormveil. At least I couldn't find it the first time. I will check again more thoroughly for the revised version of that part and make sure it's not just somewhere else. But if you are aware that it's there, do let me know so I can make sure to get that. I want to say it'll probably take minimum of a month, probably more though, for me to finish it, due to the fact that I had to essentially redo my first 3 parts, fix any mistakes in the other ones, and perhaps had to redo some of the voiceovers for some of the other parts and such. So I expect it'll be a hefty project, so I wouldn't expect it for a little while, but it should be coming sometime in the next couple of weeks or months at least. But yeah, now for the proper outro. Yeah, thank you for everyone who has been watching this series so far. I know it's a little sad to get to the end of it, but as I said, still not entirely done either. There's still things to do. And I'm hoping that I can still bring a new experience even to people who have watched the series so far. There's obviously a lot of things I gotta fix and a lot of things that I was corrected about and stuff. And a lot of things I have to add afterwards. So I will suspect it's a lot of work that I have to get through. And I'll allow myself to take breaks and stuff and not have any due date or anything. And I'll probably put out like a video or 2 in between as well. There's one that I've had on the back burner for a couple months that I was going to put out in between the last couple of videos that I put out. But for one reason or another, I just kind of pushed it back. And I want to get that done for sure. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I do have a lot of the bulk of it already done. A lot of the footage recorded. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it. And I hope that's something that y'all will enjoy. It's still Elden Ring related for the most part. And man, this series was wild. As I mentioned a bit ago, before I put out the first video, I did kind of research a little bit into 1.0 exploration that people have done on YouTube. And I did see a couple of videos in the search bar. I didn't actually watch any of them because I don't want necessarily to get influenced on what to talk about. If I can avoid it, I want to do my own kind of exploration of it. And I always thought it could be a series. So obviously since the first video, I proposed that idea. And that's why I kind of only focus on Limgrave. And the idea had been that I would be more thorough because most of those videos that I saw were just covering either a small aspect of it or very general, broad aspects of it. So I thought maybe if I put this, I could make it a whole thing. And I worked on a video. I did it live on Twitch whenever I still streamed. Just to get a little bit more help because at the time I wasn't that familiar with Elden Ring yet. Like I'd only played it a couple times, I want to say. And I definitely missed a lot due to that. Like I wasn't very familiar with it. I didn't have the guide yet. And it was borderline kind of a filler video like for me because I had this video done like a month or 2 ahead of time. And I had it saved for when I was going to go to TwitchCon EU. Because I went around that time period and like had it ready as I wasn't going to be working on videos because I was going to be over there. I put it out then and it was doing okay for my channel at the time. It wasn't marvelous or anything. But funnily enough, after I had come back from there, I actually didn't really know what to work on next. So I actually just decided to kind of start working on the next one. And that one did worse because it's Wave Peninsula, you know, kind of not super interesting area overall and not one that a lot of people go to, I would imagine, besides getting the tears, Sacred Tears. But it wasn't until the Caelid video, which I did kind of do as a Halloween video. I don't know if that helped at all or not, but that one took it to new heights and definitely kind of had me going for the rest of the series after that. And it was a kind of like rising tides lift all boats situation. So the first 2 parts of the video were actually doing better after that. Got more attention. And I kind of just kept growing steadily until I got to the Leyndell video. It just kind of blew up for my standards. And yeah, from there I was like, well, gotta write it out now, of course, because why would I not? And yeah, it's been, albeit a lot of work, it worked out pretty well for my channel and everything. It's definitely been nice to have a series that not people are coming back to and occasionally getting just new entire audiences. That actually feels like it's contributing something to like the Soulsborne sphere or something because it's definitely very hard. This community is covering almost all bases kind of thing. Like I said, I wasn't the only one doing 1.0 coverage, but the difference for my series is that I was being very thorough about it and showing every difference that I could find. So for documenting reasons and for just analyzing how games are sort of made, at least towards the end of the life cycle, it is still very interesting to some people, including myself in that regard. As someone who would like to make games, it's definitely kind of like interesting. If I can manage, one thing I would like to do for the completed video is to, hopefully someone I know has footage of the network test. And I would like to compare that additionally on top of 1.0 for some of the early parts and see if there's any changes in between that. But yeah, this series has been wild. It's been new heights for it. And I'll just briefly discuss now, even before the next video is done, which I'll probably restate then. But I would like to do this for some of the other games of the series, the FromSoft lineup. I can 100% guarantee that I'll do it for Demon's Souls Remake because I actually already have a lot of extensive knowledge of that. And that's one thing that kind of got me into wanting to do Elden Ring 2 because I'd already explored a lot of Demon Souls. It's actually speedrun that game. And I briefly did touch on 1.0 for that game, and even though it's not nearly as different as Elden Ring is from post-release to the disc version, there's still a lot of little things that are just like, wow, that's a thing, you know, that are mind-blowing. And I would like to discuss that for sure. It probably would be just a single longer video most likely. And I think I would like to do something similar with the original Demon Souls as well. But after that, I'm not sure. I might have to take up a poll on that, see what people are interested to see. That's future talk, obviously. I still gotta finish this Elden Ring 1.0 thing, which again might take a little while, but it should hopefully be coming in the near future. Anyway, if you are somehow new to the series and you're still listening right now in the outro, first of all, damn. Second of all, there's a whole series playlist that you can look at now. It is now, this bit at least of it is complete. Some of the information may be inaccurate, but it will be fixed up in a couple of months or weeks, and a completed video that's going to compile everything and fix all of those issues. So it should hopefully be accurate. But yeah, until then, thank you all for watching for the series. Thank you for, you know, liking, subscribing, commenting, everything you've done. If you've shared it with people, I appreciate it. I do hope that the completed video can reach a new height than even this series has so far. And if it does, you bet your butt I'm gonna do it for the rest of the FromSoft lineup. So here's hoping. Yeah, have a good one, everybody. Bye bye.